One of the things that I like to theorize upon and speculate upon is futurology. Now, I don't like using the term transhumanism because it's just been sullied by Alex Jones loony bins that think it's some sort of sustained plot against quote free humanity by the New World Order and all that jazz. So I don't like to use the term transhuman anymore. Because it's just been misappropriated by entities that really don't want to paint a realistic picture of it. But I think it's important. One of the most fundamentally important things we can do to expound, to speculate on what our future is going to look like 10 or even 100 or even 1,000 years from now. In these futurology circles, the most important, or at least the most frequently mentioned topic of discussion is this topic of the technological and medical singularity that will allow us, much more longevity in terms of our lifespan and how long we live before, we pass away and die. And all of this is usually framed in technologies that we're going to develop that extend life. But I think one of the areas that is almost never mentioned in terms of how we are going to radically and dramatically improve the lifespan of human beings. One of the areas that's not mentioned at all, really, that I can tell, is cutting down the amount of time that we spend unconscious, the amount of time that we spend sleeping. It's estimated, for the average lifespan in the U.S. of 75, 80, whatever, we spend about 20 some odd years of that sleeping, unconscious. And what I find interesting, there's an article that I found titled The End of Sleep, I believe the title is. It's in the description box for any of you guys that want to check that out. And they talk about all sorts of methods that scientists are trying to implement for the purposes of getting that perfect window, right when we're between cycles of REM sleep and we're at our most refreshed, and squeezing that window down to as least amount of time as possible so that we get the most refreshing sleep, at the same time cramming the amount of sleep that we actually partake in to a minimum amount of time, right? And so let's say that we could shave off 10%, 20%, 50%, depending on how we tweak this 90-minute REM sleep cycle. Let's say we got 50% back of our lifespan. Now, we don't actually live longer, but we're conscious for a longer period of time. And after all, what is life? What is life? And what is it that we fear about death? We fear the loss of our consciousness. I mean, clearly we don't really care about what happens to our body. One of the frequently mentioned topics in this discussions on transhumanism and futurology is whether or not we'll be able to upload our minds essentially into a computer and retain our thoughts and retain our personality and live. Sometimes people theorize indefinitely in this manner, or at least until our brain meets an unfortunate end. We fear the loss of our consciousness, right? And during sleep, I mean, yeah, I guess we're semi-conscious. We have REM sleep and we dream, and some of our dreams can be lucid, perhaps, but we're not actually conscious. I mean, we don't have the ability to navigate our dreams for the most part. They kind of take us for a ride, and we just kind of have to hold on and see what happens. And frankly, after we wake up, most of us forget our dreams within minutes. So it's certainly not productive, I think, to allow the human species, to allow ourselves as a species to continue, if the technology is available, to continue down this path of wasting away a large percentage of our lifetimes functionally unconscious. And frankly, I think the singularity will be reached, or at least a dramatic extension in life expectancy will be reached via a simultaneous exploration of these two avenues of life extension. I think these two avenues are going to work in conjunction with each other. Sleep minimalization and actual life extension. Now, the interesting part is that as we develop technologies that allow us to physically live longer, as we figure out how to inhibit telomere degradation, and as we discover advances in diet and nutrition, and as we slowly inch our life expectancy further and further, and as machines develop that can perform surgeries on the fly, nanoscale robots that can attend to a cancerous tumor and excise it and remove it from your system. As we develop these kind of technologies, These two are going to work in conjunction with each other because, of course, as you live longer and as we minimalize sleep debt, it's going to have a compounding effect, right? The longer you live and the less you sleep, that's going to, in effect, create the maximum amount of time that you can spend conscious, healthy, and living a long, healthy life. Now, given that, something else that I always ponder is, how will this change the nature of punishment? Now, of course, the worst crime that one can commit, according to our society, and this could probably objectively be proven somehow as well, but the worst crime that one can commit is to take the life of another human being. And so we hand out, for the most part, in most of the Western world, we've abolished the death penalty, capital punishment. We usually dole out a life sentence for the crime of taking another human life, right? You're usually going to be in jail for life. And we have to ask how an extended lifespan, possibly of 100 or even 1,000 years for the human species, way down the road. And of course, this is far away removed from any lifespan that any human born this year or this century is going to enjoy. But let's just run a thought experiment. How ethical is it to lock somebody up for 1,000 years? Again, let's say the human lifespan exceeded 1,000 years. We finally got to that point. We reached that medical singularity, and human beings were able to exponentially extend their lifespan. Is it ethical to lock somebody up for 1,000 years for any crime? I mean, think about the nature of punishment. Think about time dilation. This is something that I'm very interested in. There was an article that I read that was pretty fantastical and taking a lot of stretches, the way that the person who wrote it approached the issue. But the headline of the article was, could prisoners be, something along the lines of, could prisoners be tricked into believing that they served 1,000 years sentence in 8 hours or 8 days or something along those lines? I'm paraphrasing heavily for the article, but it's going to be in the description box. And again, that's fantastical and it sounds ridiculous, but when you think about, first, our ability to extend the human lifespan, possibly into the hundreds of years, our ability to compress the sleep debt that we pay. And when you do research into things like solitary confinement and how one day can feel like 2 or 3 days or a week, and 1 week can feel like 2 or 3 weeks, and 2 or 3 weeks can feel like months, and months can feel like years. And we all know the phrase that time flies when you're having fun. And there's a lot of interesting science going into exploring this phenomenon. I mean, we're talking about different modes of consciousness. There's a big industry popping up around the psychedelic community surrounding sensory deprivation tanks, where one is completely deprived of all senses, and the reports coming back from these sensory deprivation tanks, and Vice did an interesting report on this, I'll put it in the description box as well, but the reports coming back from these experiences, where you're cut off from all senses, sight, sound, visual stimulus, and all that, is that one reaches a kind of euphoric state in which 5, 6, 7 hours time can pass in what feels like 10 minutes. And specifically in the psychedelic community, I mean, we talk about things like DMT and LSD, where you can experience things like ego death and time dilation, and 10 minutes can feel like 1,000 years or even an eternity. You know, time dilation. Given that knowledge, given the fact that human beings can be made to experience time dilation, can we turn that into a rigid science? Can we discover what makes time pass by more slowly or more rapidly than it really is in our minds? And then can we kind of trigger that in terms of a punishment for a prison sentence? Or vice versa, the reverse. Can we trigger that in order to make people experience a pleasurable stimulus for a longer period of time, even though that time period hasn't changed? But back to the question at hand. Even if somebody killed somebody, would it be ethical to make somebody serve out 1,000-year sentence? We're talking about something that's never been explored. And people who spend 20 or 30 years in solitary confinement report this phenomena of turning inwards in themselves and really losing their ego and losing their minds. And once you lose your mind, are you really alive? It's kind of like a death that one suffers, even though we still keep them alive. I find this extremely interesting. And if you do as well, why don't you discuss it in the comment section? I'll post videos like this every once in a while. just because I find it interesting. This channel, after all, is an exploration of what it means to be human, not specifically MGTOW related. So if you like these kind of videos, let me know, and I'll post more of them. Now, briefly, it's been brought to my attention that my PayPal link is not working. I'll just briefly say this. If you're interested in donating, while I get this issue resolved, because frankly, I don't know what's causing it, while I get this issue resolved, if you do want to donate, make sure to go to my channel and click on the About section and click on the icon for the PayPal tip jar, because that works apparently. People are able to donate by using that method. But for some reason, when I put the link into my videos, it doesn't work. So if you are interested in donating, and of course donations are 100% appreciated and 100% funneled back into making these videos, if you are interested in that, and it's highly appreciated, please make sure that you do it through that method while I figure out what's going on with that. Anyway, thanks for listening.